what we have in Huddersfield now is a massive growth in small businesses being formed from people around the 20, 21, 22 age group, and they're feeding into our creative economy. Have you ever met anybody who's had a good idea? You know what they're like? They're obsessed, aren't they? They're like that. And they just go around through life thinking, how am I going to achieve what I want to achieve? But they keep bumping into people, falling over things, and making fools of themselves, because they never notice that there's somebody over there who can actually help them. And there's actually somebody over here who's already tried it, and they could learn from their mistake. But they don't do that, do they? They're just like that. And that's the danger that you can get in, generating all this activity. But a town full of creative people isn't necessarily a creative town. And this is why our third stage is about networking and circulating people and ideas. Firstly, you need information. You need to know yourself. This is a problem. A lot of people in the past have started off not knowing very much about what's going on. And our first step in Huddersfield was to actually invest in serious research and mapping. I know it's all being done now, but it needs doing regularly, not just once, but you need to know how your economy, how your local networks are growing. You need to involve the media in that. As I said, if the media don't play ball, you create your own media. You build network organisations, you work on behalf of people so they start to feel part of the family. They feel there's more to be gained from giving to this thing than standing on the sidelines. Some places I go and they say, well, we really like this idea, this cycle of creativity, but in our town we tend to forget about all this, and we start here. Because platforms for delivery is about the infrastructure, the sexy things, the buildings, the galleries, the theatres, the workshops, the shiny steel and glass icons of our creative age, the things that politicians and all of us like to be associated with. And certainly, they're vital. But what we try to show in this cycle of creativity is that without the first three stages, these places are just like palaces in a desert. They're just standing in splendid isolation. And people say, well, why is nobody coming? Why don't they come? We've built it and they still haven't come. This is what we tried to do. This was where Keith did a fantastic job for us in Huddersfield, transforming these shagged out, empty buildings nobody wanted to use, were on the verge of being demolished for yet another Tesco supermarket. And Keith and others gave new life to these buildings, turned them into the Huddersfield Media Centre. But again, that's often where people stop and forget that actually building markets and audiences is what it's all about. If you haven't got an audience for what you're offering, you ain't got anything. And so much of our work has been building that market intelligence, that understanding, branding and packaging, of owning one's own intellectual property in Huddersfield and protecting it. And so we've invested a lot in a major programme of promoting the town as a place for creative business. We've created CEDA, the Creative Industry Development Agency. Some of you might have come across them because they work nationally. In fact, they've just signed a contract in Singapore to develop creative industries training infrastructure in Singapore. And this is Huddersfield trying to push itself in with the big boys. I know it's a laugh because at the end of the day we are Huddersfield, but places like Huddersfield have got certain advantages. As long as we don't try and play the same game that the Leeds and the Birminghams and the Manchesters are playing, but we actually understand what we can offer them, what Derby can offer them that those cities can't offer, then there is an important niche that we're successfully operating in now. So far I've showed you a line. How does it become a cycle? Well, it's this all-important final arrow. What's this arrow all about? This arrow is about places like Huddersfield, maybe places like Derby too, where you ever met anybody like this? You heard about this creative town thing? Yeah. Are you part of it? No, I'm part of it now. It's that lot. Oh, it's them, is it? Oh, well, we ought to know. They're involved. It's bound to fail, isn't it? I know it ever works in this town anyway, does it? And we're going to get involved. You'll see them all fall. And of course, it usually does. It usually does fail if people take that attitude. But when a few people have been around this cycle, and they have made that final leap, they have reached a market, reached an audience, they've reached some level of ambition, people can't ignore that and say, see her, she actually did it. Maybe I could too. Maybe you could. Maybe we all could. Maybe this town's not as shit as we thought it was. And that's when you make that leap. And that's when that next wave of activity, of energy, drives the cycle. Because the funding runs out at some point. And so what's the legacy? The legacy is, some of it's obvious, the infrastructure, the stuff that the politicians and the media and the Queen and Tony Blair like to come along and cut ribbons on. And property land value too. And certainly we've got some certain very fine buildings and they work. And this Huddersfield Media Centre, and it's full of businesses and it doesn't receive any subsidy at all from the public sector, and it's a fully self-funding creative community. But there are other legacies too. A model which still works, which still inspires, which still explains, which still motivates people. A sense that you might have come to the party late. You weren't part of that original group. But you can still join in. There's still a place for you. You can still put something in and take something out.